Okay, looks like we are live.
Hold on.
Okay, welcome to Beyond the Comfort Zone Live, a show that helps you step out of your comfort zone into a place of growth and learning. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Aviva Wolmer, and I'm a Vistage Chair in Atlanta, Georgia. I lead 3 groups of incredibly driven and ambitious CEOs who want to accelerate toward their goals faster. In addition, I facilitate a group of growth-oriented key executives who are dedicated to driving transformative change within their organizations. Our peer groups are powerful mastermind collectives where members come together regularly to share ideas and experiences and support one another. No matter how many years of experience a leader has, the reality is their knowledge and experiences are still limited. They don't know what they don't know because they haven't been exposed to it yet. A peer environment creates valuable opportunities to explore the unknown, be more proactive, and make better decisions. By leveraging the collective wisdom and diverse perspectives of their peers, members are able to achieve more than they ever could on their own. Our guest today is Michael Sonbert, an accomplished author, speaker, coach, autism dad, and advocate for transforming workplace culture. He's the CEO of Skyrocket Education and Rebel Culture. Love the name. And he coaches leaders globally with clients like Google, Northwell Health, and Calvin Klein. He's dedicated to improving the work experience for millions. And a significant portion of our adult lives, as we know it, is dedicated to work. So Michael is a strong advocate that work should be full of joy, clarity, and fulfillment. Let's welcome Michael Sonbert to Beyond the Comfort Zone. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks so much for having me, Aviva. I'm really excited to be here. This is awesome.
Awesome. So glad to have you. To our guests, I would love you to put in chat, what about culture is most troubling to you and what is most exciting to you? Feel free to put questions in the chat throughout the show, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. Or have Michael answer them as best he can.
Great. Well,
I'm not answering the culture questions. Michael, we see people join us. I just mentioned culture and what's working and not. I'm curious what you see leaders are getting wrong about workplace culture.
Yeah, well, a lot. If I could just go back a little bit, I started my work in urban school districts around the country, in the zip codes that most people go out of their way to avoid. And I started to become fascinated by how 2 schools, a block from each other, in some of the most, poverty-stricken and trauma-filled neighborhoods in our country, could have radically different culture, despite all the external factors pushing on them. And what I saw was that it was always because of the leader or the leaders, and it was because they were doing things like communicating things early and often and very clearly. They were observing their team in action. They were providing feedback, not always, praise, but sometimes constructive feedback. But they were leading in a lot of ways alongside their teams and were really committed to developing folks. The thing that a lot of leaders get wrong is they think that because they have a great idea or because they are visionary or really smart, that the culture is just going to figure itself out. It doesn't. And a lot of companies and organizations I work with, the employees are much like if you've ever had a really bad storm in your town and there's a 4-way stoplight and it's out because the power's out. They're very much like those people at that stoplight, like unsure whether they should go, starting to inch out, getting horns kind of honked at them, figuratively, of course, but there's a lack of clarity around how we should operate here, and I don't really know what our organization stands for. And so then leaders sometimes try and fix those misses through things like half-day summer Fridays and gift cards, and we have a pool table in the lounge, and employees don't care about that stuff. At least they don't care about it when so many of the other things are so broken. So it's really we're in a tough state in terms of employee satisfaction. You know that. People listening know this, you know.
So if I'm hearing what you're saying, it's not that those types of things are bad, but you have to have a good culture for them to work. And if you don't have a good culture, those things don't fix it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly right. They're not objectively bad or good. Maybe they are good. Oh, they're great. I love working here. I'm on fire to be a part of this team. My boss is awesome, super clear in their vision, provides me tons of support. I always know where I stand, and we have a pool table. Great. But if those other things aren't in place, and now we have a pool table, who cares? You know, I don't respect my boss. I don't enjoy being here. I'm checked out for much of the time. So it definitely doesn't solve the problem.
What do you think is the biggest impediment to building a strong culture?
It's great. Well, the first thing is that and this isn't the biggest, but the first thing is that leaders have to get that it's important and that it doesn't happen by accident. But the biggest impediment that I've seen is once folks get that it's their responsibility is around fear, leader fear. It's easier for me to say as a leader, I don't have the right people on my team, or I can't believe that they're gossiping, or they should know that ASAP means within 24 hours. It's easier for me to do those things because I'm not put in a position in those cases of being uncomfortable. It's harder to be the person who is consistently messaging our values, holding people incredibly accountable for the things that we say we care about and the ways in which we're going to operate. And a lot of leaders, they don't, you know, they don't know if that'll be well received. They think they have concerns that their employees will say that they're micromanaging them. And so most leaders don't do much about those things because they're worried about what the results will be. It's really a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I'm not going to provide real clarity for my team because I'm worried that they're going to think, you know, either that I'm, you know, micromanaging them or that, you know, I'm not empowering them. And then what happens is employees feel untethered and they feel like, I don't know how I'm supposed to operate here. I'm just going to do my own thing. And that obviously doesn't lead to great culture.
So let's talk a little bit more about, big picture, really great, strong culture. I hear you hinting at things like vision and, clarity. But if you were to describe what a really great workplace culture looked like and felt like, what would that be?
Yeah. So again, it starts at the top. This idea that we don't have the right people, anybody can be the right person. They just have to be working in an environment where the leadership is impeccably clear about their vision and what they are attempting to accomplish. And then that their values, their organizational values or core tenets or whatever folks call them, are actually lived and not simply espoused. Aviva, I was with a team recently of 50 folks and I started to talk about core values. It was 50 people from the same team. And there was kind of like a little bit of an eye roll. We have core values. I said, great. Raise your hand if you can recite all 6 of them right now. Raise your hand if you can recite all 6 of your core values. 2 hands went up out of 50. That's a problem. We're saying a lot of things in the workplace, and we don't actually we espouse things. We don't actually embody them, right? And so the idea is that the vision and value are lived, and that comes from leaders, and that feedback is grounded in the vision and values, and that shout outs are grounded in vision and values, and there are consistent conversations happening around hey, where's a place where you really met one of our values since we last met? Where's a place one specific to our values that you need to do better going forward? And this consistent messaging around here's what we care about here and here's how we operate. And then when those things are in place, communication is so important. I mean, there's insane statistics about the amount of like workplace frustration that is directly related to poor communication, late communication, inconsistent communication. And so, we tell folks all the time, you could have the best ideas in the world. If you're asking your team to do stuff, to pivot on a Friday morning when they've been working on something all week because you were unclear on the initial ask, you're going to absolutely hurt your culture. Now, if you have those other things I mentioned in place, it's much easier to get folks to pivot they'll be much more bought into it. So, this environment, I see it with teams I coach and teams that I've learned from. The folks are on fire to be there. They're on fire to be a part of it, right? They're not having conversations about, oh, it's Monday morning, right? Which, by the way, is normal. I'm not putting that down, but they're excited about what they're working on, and they're willing to go above and beyond, not for extra money or not for extra recognition, but because they care so much about what they are trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. You can tell in an individual when they are just passionate, excited to be there, constantly coming up with new ideas, versus honestly when they're burnt out and the work is maybe getting done, but you can tell that difference.
Yeah, totally.
I'm curious, I'm hearing you talk a lot about this clarity. Do you think that's the main driver in whether an individual is getting burnt out and frustrated versus engaged and passionate?
Yeah, it's one of the main drivers. I don't know if I've ever ranked them, but it's right at the top of the list. I mean, we coach leaders all the time. I coach leaders all the time when I'm like, yeah, what's the what matters here? What do we care about? What is it supposed to look like? I was shadowing a leader recently who was talking to her team and was saying things like, okay, so look, can we do that? Can we do that this week? And the team's like, yeah, sure. And so my coaching for her after is like, okay, when this week? Right. And how will folks send it to you? And what's that, because this week is a lot different than Friday at 5 p.m. or Thursday at noon. And so when we don't provide that level of clarity for people, right. And by the way, 91% of, I saw a survey recently, 91% of the current workforce thinks their bosses could do a better job at holding the team accountable. So employees actually want this. They want to know that it's Friday at 4 p.m. so they can prioritize it. So when we say general things to people, they respond in general ways. When we make suggestions, they take those suggestions or not. But if we can get to a place of clarity, and as I say to our teams all the time, when we make the easy stuff easy, it allows us to create space for the work to actually happen. And so in the example I just shared, here's what's going to happen there. There were 10 people in that meeting. About 5 of them are going to do the thing that the leader asked with varying degrees of success because there was no clarity on what it should look like. And the other half won't. And then the leader, who is a highly paid executive, is now going to be chasing team members down to get a thing that she was unclear about what it looks like and when it's due. And that leads to employee frustration, leader frustration, and to your point, folks being really burned out. So clarity is a huge, huge factor here.
Yeah, accountability comes up in conversations all the time with the CEOs and key executives I work with. And it's interesting because you hit the nail on the head. A lot of times they're not setting clear enough expectations up front with their people, but they think they are. In their mind, what they said was clear as day. Mm-hmm. And there's a big mismatch there. So how would you coach leaders other than saying Friday at 4 instead of, ASAP or any of that, to really make sure they're being clear in their expectations?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And just to your previous point about the accountability thing, it becomes almost impossible to hold people accountable when what you've asked them is unclear. And so I work with leaders all the time, and it sounds like you do as well, where they want coaching around holding their teams accountable. But that's not the first step in almost every case. The first step in almost every case is what you just asked me, which is let's get to a place of deep clarity, right, around what we care about. And so, or around this specific ask. And so to your question, we go macro first. What do we care about as an organization? What are we trying to accomplish? What we're as a team? What matters here? How are we going to agree to operate? And then we start to get into more granular instances, right? And so there's everything from role play where I provide somebody with, or scenario practice, right? Provide somebody with an unclear scenario and have them revise it to get to a place of actual clarity. To your point about the thing that seems kind of clear. Hey, do me a favor, send that to me this week. And we get to a much clearer place when they start to script out their own language. And then there's shadowing as well. So I shadow a lot of leaders in team meetings and in one-to-one meetings. And I take, meticulous notes and we look at them after. And in some cases, they've knocked it out of the park and they've provided real clarity for the team. In some cases, they haven't. We revise those. They always follow up with the person and say, hey, my apologies. And that's key here, is that the leader is owning right? Like the leader is owning, I didn't communicate this effectively, right? I am not talking about the employee who doesn't care about the workplace at all. That's a different conversation. I am talking about the employees who care about work and want to be there, but they just don't know what's expected of them. And I coach leaders to own that 100%. This is on me. It's not on you. It's my fault. If we only had 5 out of 10 people do the thing, I wasn't clear in my expectations. That's unfair to you. I'm going to get clearer right now.
Yeah. It's interesting when you self-analyze, because I mean, we're in the exact same boat. I'm guessing you're probably better at the most coaching others, but you still do it too. Is like when things go wrong, I always go back and I'm like, did I give good instructions? Some of the times I did, but often it's so clear that I did not give very good instructions. And I thought that whenever I wrote it, I was just that clear. So I think even that reflection exercise.
Well, and Aviva, to your point, a lot of times we have been really clear, but what's missing is some kind of accountability on the back end, right? So, and you know, sometimes this is a shock with for leaders with whom I work, because it feels like it's a lot of extra time, but the amount of time it saves in the long run, right? So if you're managing a team and you tell everybody that they need to send you X thing by Friday at 5 p.m., the leader has that on their calendar as well. And Friday at 5 p.m., they look at who sent it and who hasn't, and they're following up with the people who haven't, not in an unkind way, not in like the you're in trouble way, but hey, Michael, you know, the such and such was due at 5 p.m. today. I haven't gotten it from you. Tell me what's going on. How can I support you? When can you commit to having this? And when we include those pieces on the back end, we send a message to folks that like, hey, what we say here really matters. And that that this thing has some teeth. I mean, employees have so many competing priorities in the workplace. You know, a lot of times leaders will be like, I can't believe they didn't do this. I can't believe they didn't do that. I'm like, hey man, like they have a lot going on. Like they have a lot of work to do. And so you've got to make sure that the stuff you're asking of them, assuming it's important, which it should be, that it has a certain level of teeth to it to make sure that it gets done.
Yeah. Even an openness when you're setting the dates to say, you know, if there's a
can
priority concern here, you need to let me know. Like, that's why I'm setting a date so we can change it.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, here's when I'd like this, but tell me, does that work for your schedule? Hey, you know what, Michael, Wednesday at noon's not going to work for me because I have X, Y, and Z. I could do Thursday at 2 p.m. Awesome. Do me a favor, send an invite, put it on both of our calendars right now. Reach out to me along the way if you need any support on it.
Mm-hmm.
But this stuff, like if I could just say, like, this is like, and you've seen this too in your work, like the conversation that we're having right now, a lot of leaders, like it makes them cringe. They don't want to be in the weeds to this level, right? And by the way, the visionary CEO may not be, but the person that they manage needs to be with the team, or the person that person manages, like somebody needs to be at this level of granularity, but it makes folks cringe. Oftentimes some folks, they've started a business because they have a great idea, or they have a great product, or they have like a vision to like change like the world, or change people's experience. And they say to me, like, I don't want to be sending email invites to people. I get it. But you know, one of my favorite expressions is you get what you get. And if you're going to leave your team to operate on their own in whatever way they think is best, you're going to get the results that come from that, which in some cases could be solid, but overwhelmingly it's not, right? You can't have 50 people operating in 50 different ways and expect that you're going to get to a place of at least ultimate success.
No, and you're right. Strong visionaries, this is very anti the way their brains even function and work.
Yeah.
That's when you put support around you. You have a really strong EA or a chief of staff who can sit there and make sure that they are doing the integration piece, right? So it's a matter of knowing your strengths as a leader too. If this is truly not you, then you need to supplement it, make sure someone's doing it. Otherwise, you're impacting your team and their success.
Yeah, and what happens, I love your point there, because what happens is sometimes those visionary leaders will say, because they're uncomfortable doing this, that I don't care about this stuff, right? I've had leaders say things to me, I don't care if people come to meetings on time. Really? Do your partners feel the same way? If 4 people on your team walked into a meeting with one of your partners 15 minutes late, would you be okay with that? Of course you wouldn't. Of course you care if people come on time. Of course you care if they meet deadlines. You're just not comfortable holding them accountable to that or setting those expectations. So let somebody else do it. You focus on the big picture, you focus on raising money, you focus on the dollars and cents or the product or whatever it is. Let somebody on the team step in there, because if you don't have that, frustration starts to rise. You talked about, or like earlier, like where does the burnout come from? I'm frustrated. I don't know how to operate here. Aviva hasn't sent me the thing. It's holding me up. But when was it even due? Like, I finally get it. It doesn't look the way I think it's supposed to look. And now there's a bunch of like kind of like infighting or back and forth or employee to employee frustration, when it could totally be fixed. Not 100%, because we're talking about human beings here, where it could be fixed with real clear expectations on the front end.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I know you are a data guy. You look at all the metrics when it comes to culture. What does the data say about how happy people are or not happy they are at work right now?
Yeah, I mean, the most recent study I saw had 9 out of 10 people currently dissatisfied at work, and 65% of the current workforce actively looking for other jobs. That is staggering. And there's data. There's a stat I saw recently, it might have been from Forbes, but like that 75% of leaders think that they are inspiring their teams, but only about 27% of their teams agree, right? So that disconnect between like who I think I am and how I think I show up for my people, and who they think I am and how they think I show up for them, is a really powerful stat.
Wow. Those are really scary statistics if you think about it.
Yeah, but like, listen, go to a family barbecue and ask people about work. I mean, honestly, like for everybody watching this, like I go to a family barbecue. The next time you're at a party, ask 5 people about work. Hey, how's work? How's it going? How's your boss? The things that you'll hear, oh, he's an idiot. Like, oh, she has no idea what I do all day. And she's a waste. She's a waste of like, and my favorite, which is the ultimate for me indictment, sounds like this. He's okay. He leaves me alone, right? We've gotten to this place of like, for so many people, my boss cannot provide value for me. I don't care what they say. I am better off. In fact, I'm best off if they simply leave me alone. And that I can tolerate. What a horrible miss that is.
It's just huge lack of alignment within the company.
Right.
If they're feeling that way, they're not listening to the goals and the objectives or hearing, that is a really scary thought to think about the statistics and just the example you just gave at a barbecue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's crazy. Crazy.
To turn that around, is it just the leader investing in some of the things we've been talking about? Or it seems like it would take a whole lot more than what we've been talking about to fix those kinds of statistics. So I'm curious thoughts.
Culture change is a huge piece. It's why most people are, it's like a huge lift, which is why most people are either bad at it or don't even try it. And it's just chalk up like, hey, this is just how it is here. And if people want to leave, they can leave. As I mentioned earlier, it starts with like the macro, with like defining this stuff, but this is all an execution piece of Aviva. This is about doing the things day to day, week to week, month to month, that are going to reinforce the different things we believe. I was talking about one of my mentors and a CEO friend, when he was leading his most recent team, or maybe a couple teams ago. He wouldn't park in the spot that was designated for him right next to the front door. Instead, he gave that to the employee of the month, and they had different metrics for how that employee of the month was determined. He parked in the furthest spot away from the door, and then walked through the parking lot every morning before anyone got there, and picked up any trash that he saw in the parking lot, and threw it in the garbage. Because in his mind, my employees deserve to show up to an environment that is pristinely clean, that is immaculate, and I'm setting the table for the great work we're going to do together. A lot of leaders think stuff like that is beneath them, but that gesture, even if nobody knows about it, is worth 100 pool tables or 100 gift cards. So it's really about the execution of it. Am I willing and am I able to do this, to do the things day after day that are gonna make the shift. The little things, responding to emails quickly, right? Checking in with people. Hey, how's your daughter's soccer game this weekend? Like those types of things, they change culture when they happen consistently.
So let me ask you kind of the deep-seated number one question of the day.
Yeah.
Culture is so important to the success of a company. And yet we have the statistics you're talking about. Why are more leaders not investing in their cultures?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple things. One is that there are leaders who think that it's not me. It's not my responsibility. I've told them they were hired here. They're well paid. They need to figure it out. It's the wrong attitude. Leaders tell me all the time, they'll be like, I've told my team 100 times not to do this thing and they keep doing it. I'm like, thank you for telling me that you are both easy to ignore and not terribly convincing. Great, let's work on those things, right? And so it's all about like that initial piece is ownership, is understanding that like I'm the lever here. One of our mantras on our teams is everything that happens on your team is on you. You've either created it or you're allowing it to exist. And so getting folks to that place of understanding that you are the lever is usually a challenge for a lot of people who don't think that they are and think that a lot of this stuff happens by magic. It's hard work. It sometimes doesn't feel like the work because the returns aren't immediate. And so it's much easier for me to hop on a sales call and close that deal than it is to have like lots of personal conversations with the team, to shadow them while they're working, to be really clear in my, in my evaluation or my feedback to them. So it doesn't feel like there's immediate return on it. And so a lot of leaders would rather just put their head down and do the work, do their own work. Leaders tell me that all the time. I say, you're basically telling me that you're too busy driving to stop for gas. That's going to catch up to you really soon, right? But then the last piece is what I mentioned earlier. There's a discomfort in doing it. There's a discomfort in saying, in looking somebody in the team on the eye, it's looking somebody on your team in the eye, whether it's over Zoom or in person, and saying, hey, I want to apologize. I communicated that ask way too late and I did not set you up for success. That is my fault. And I will do my best to make sure it doesn't happen again. But thank you for still delivering a home run. I'm not surprised, but I just want you to know how appreciative I am. Like that is hard for a lot of people to do. And we haven't built that as like a muscle. But you do that to somebody who you've communicated late to, or who you've made their life like harder because like you haven't like provided clarity on what something's supposed to look like, or even things like I talked to somebody the other day who like their 11 a.m. meeting starts at 11:20 because the CEO doesn't roll in until then. So everybody's like waiting for the CEO to come in. There's no apology. There's no like here's why I need to tell you all about this. So then the 11 a.m. meeting goes late. So now everybody's late for the rest of the day to everything they have. So there are some people on the team who just become okay with everything we do here is going to be late, even for our partners. And there are some people who are miserable. It's churning them up inside. But the leader needs to do two things there. They need to come on time to the freaking meeting. And they also need to apologize when they're late. And if they're going to go late, they're going to ask everyone's permission. And I know it sounds crazy because CEOs often, they're like, I'm the boss. I don't have to. Yeah, you do. Because there might be something that somebody has at 12 noon that day that is really important. It's integral for the work that you all are doing. And it matters immensely for that to get started on time. So something that sounds like, hey, folks, it is 11:59. We've got about 15 more minutes worth of stuff here. Do me a favor, just show of hands. Who can hang out for the remaining 15 minutes? And if you have something that's urgent, step out. I will personally catch you up. Like that conversation goes a million miles with employees. It just does.
That struck a chord. We just got a heart while you were talking.
Great. I'm glad to hear it.
It's interesting because I listened to all of those things and it's hard and it's uncomfortable, to be a great leader. But one of the things you said stood out. It actually was one of our behaviors in my old company, but get what you tolerate, right? Like,
yeah.
If you allow things to go on, then they're going to continue to go on. If you set the stage for it to be different, then it will be different. Right. And I think that's very hard to take that kind of ownership as a leader, but very necessary.
Agreed.
So I love your example of going back and saying, I'm sorry for setting a deadline too quickly, close to, assignment. I
Yeah.
can't tell you. I think so many people would be like just shocked if
They'd
they're
be shocked.
that, like so
Yeah.
taken aback.
Right. And it's so we haven't normalized this. And so then leaders don't do it because it feels uncomfortable. I mean, think about for a lot of people's their relationship with their own partners or with their own family, right? I mean, it's easy. Yeah, they know I love them. I don't need to like tell them. Like, I mean, looking somebody in the eye and having like that personal connection just goes so far. And especially when you've made a mistake, or even if you don't think you've made a mistake, but like the results haven't, the results aren't what you've expected, you can own that. Hey, I thought I was clear on this. I obviously I wasn't. And so I apologize for that. Let me reset those expectations. Here, we need A, B, and C things to happen. Is that clear? Oh, great. Okay, my apologies again. When's our next deadline? And you can absolutely have those conversations with folks.
You mentioned earlier the word micromanagement.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts on micromanagement are, and if you ever hear concerns about this constant follow-up kind of attitude is leading to or being micromanagement.
Yeah, so I love this question because I think micromanagement is mostly a made up word. It is, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of leaders over the last 2 decades. I've met one who met my definition of a micromanager, who was involved in things they had no business being involved in, who was like poring over people's emails and looking at the language that they were using and like, 10 or 12 communications with one single employee in a single day. What people, I think that the word micromanagement is a term that employees made up to describe the feeling of, and I'm not blaming employees for this. It's coming back to leaders, but to describe the feeling of, I don't know what matters here. On Monday, we operate like X. On Tuesday, we operate like Y. On Wednesday, we operate like Z. My boss is sometimes here, sometimes gone. I'm not talking about physically, like, whether it's mentally or whatever. And then I get random misaligned feedback from this person when they don't really know what I'm working on, and I haven't, and I haven't seen them in 2 months. And that feels micromanaging to people. That feels like, hey, get off my back. Our norm here, whether folks would articulate this or not, our norm here is that you leave us alone and we do our jobs. And so now you want to know what I'm working on. And that's where that term micromanagement comes from. But like employees, I shared that stat with you earlier, 91% of the workplace wants more accountability. They want it, right? Your employees are smart. They see when somebody walks into your noon meeting at 12:08. And if you don't say anything to them, right, as the leader to that person, whether it's in private or as a whole group, you've sent the message to all the people who are there on time. Hey, you're an idiot because you came on time. Because Michael can come at 12:08 and I'm not going to say anything to him, right? And so what starts to happen is people say, oh, are the rules here differently for Michael than for us? Maybe I should start coming in whenever I want. Right? They start to get annoyed. They start to feel like there's a lack of consistency. They don't feel like they're in safe, trusted hands. And so I've seen very few examples of employees who haven't thrived and been thrilled when we go from a place of we're not really sure what matters here to a place of like, here's how we operate, here's what matters, and here's how I'm going to follow up to make sure you're successful.
So you coach leaders and work with companies who come from kind of this more chaotic state to getting to this more organized, very clear expectation state. And from what I was hearing before about micromanagement, it seems like employees in that transition will feel micromanaged until they realize on the other side that it's actually solving their problems. How do you coach leaders to handle the conversations about the transition to solve for some of that feeling of micromanagement?
Yeah. For the first thing is folks have to, and by the way, the employees know that there's a problem. Like nobody's like, nobody thinks in a place where the culture doesn't have to be chaotic, where it's just not that strong. Employees are totally aware. This starts with, again, leader ownership and a leader saying, hey, whether they say I'm working with a coach or not, who cares? But they say, hey, I have not done a great job. And, whether this is, team wide or organization wide, or it's ideally better if it's not in an email, but there's some message that sounds like, hey, I have not done a good job providing X, Y, and Z for you all. As a result of that, our results are A, B, C. Anecdotally, people have told me, blah, blah, blah. And our most recent survey results show, severe gaps in these multiple categories. That is unfair to you, and that is entirely on me. And so I am shifting my leadership style, and I'm going to commit to doing whatever it is, providing more clarity, more accountability, more follow-up coaching, et cetera. And you can expect it to look like this. During that process, like there might be some growing pains. I'm asking for you to embody our value of whatever, continuous improvement, during that process, and to let me know, right, to communicate with me if there's anything that I do as we make this transition that doesn't feel great for you, that feels like you are being micromanaged, or that feels like it's just not aligned to the way we do things here, because I want your feedback so I can be better for all of us. Now that doesn't fix everything, but holy cow, if you do that, what a difference, right? What a difference. But most leaders don't do it. They just pivot, right? I gotta change these things. I'm gonna start holding everybody accountable. And now that's where the micromanagement thing comes from. It's like, wait, hold on. Now it matters that we do things on time. Now it matters that we do things a certain way. And it really gets under employees' skin.
Yeah, there's a big difference in that explanation and transition versus just doing, because just doing is dramatic.
It's
and probably traumatic too.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a great example. I mean, everybody kind of up, if you're making changes in your business, what a great way to explain, how those changes and why those changes are occurring. So that's an awesome example.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you being a guest today. I ask all my guests one final question on this show that has nothing to do with culture. But what is something out of your comfort zone that you have never done before and might want to try?
That's a great question. So before we went live, you were talking about your experiences skydiving and hang gliding, and I told you that no chance am I doing either of those, because I fly a lot for work. As I was joking with you before the call, I fly a lot for work, and I only go up in the air when I have to go somewhere and not for fun. But I have a friend who is he's invited me to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with him, and
Nice.
I am debating it, and I want to do it. I am worried to get to 17,000 feet and be oxygen deprived and be thousands and thousands of miles away from my house and be up on a mountain. So I am nervous about it, and I think I'm probably going to do it in the next couple of years. So that's my thing.
Awesome. My coach and me had me starting to think to ask you, so what's holding you back? But you hadn't answered the question before I could even ask it. But I hope you do, and please let me know. I'd love to hear all about it.
Phenomenal. I will.
I am putting Michael and I's contact info in the comments right now. So if anyone wants to get a hold of Michael, you know how.
Please reach out.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's truly been an honor to have you as a guest on my show.
My pleasure.
And thank you to everyone who joined us live. Until next time on Beyond the Comfort Zone, I encourage all of my viewers to try something new outside your comfort zone, because that's where growth occurs and life begins. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.